Was okay? All right.
All right.
So at 6 o'clock, everybody can hear the bell. The time for which this meeting is called and posted. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Those who have better eyes than I do, or don't, I guess.
Yeah.
The first order of business is approval of minutes, superintendent's report, assistant superintendent, and director of finance and operations. Report, school committee member reports, starting with Hallie. Citizens' requests, international trips, Westborough High School presentation. School improvement plans for each of the school buildings. A vote on the official school committee delegate to the MASC. A review of the MASC resolutions for MASC and the MASS, which is superintendents, as well as the school committees, which will be the first reading. Town warrant articles, the high school gym air conditioning, which is something we've been working on for a long time. Let's see, and the superintendent goals with adjournment. So with that, we can deal with the approval of minutes from September the 6th of 2023. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the minutes from September 6, 2023.
Is there a second?
I second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. 500. Okay, Amber, your report, please.
Thank you. It's good to see all of you without it raining outside. It's a beautiful day. I have 2 points of highlight. One, our back to school nights are happening across the district. I actually, for the first time in my stretch, have not had an opportunity to attend most of them. But my understanding from touching base with each of the principals, and they'll be here tonight, is that things are going along smoothly and that they feel like they've been well attended, positive, and providing families a chance to connect. There's next week still a final cycle, and then hopefully by the end of September we finish those, and then we move into the early cycle of conferences at the elementary level coming up. So things are moving along as we would hope. I would say that I'll knock on wood, but I feel like buses and vans ran a little more smoothly this week thus far, and we're ironing out some additional changes. So we'll continue to keep you updated on those items. We also did issue the letter that was developed in a shared collaboration with you. We haven't received a response yet, but those are just kind of 2 quick, brief updates. The one item that I just want to highlight tonight is that we will be attending the town budget summit. It will be here beginning at 6 o'clock. And it is an opportunity for everyone, the major boards, of which we are 2 that bring our budget. Christy Williams brings forward the overarching large budget drivers and calls out those issues that they want people to be thinking about coming into the budget cycle. She represents the aspects of the different departments, and they share those with her, and then we present on the schools. I will talk briefly about what I think my slides will be including right now, and then I'll send you slides tomorrow. Anita and I have been working on them today. We need to finish them up tonight and polish them tomorrow morning and be able to send them to you. Our presentation is relatively short. I don't feel like we're bringing forward pieces that require large conversation. I'll be looking at enrollment, special ed, and contracts, are the big drivers of our work. And we'll talk a little bit about each of those, highlighting what our stable contracts will look like at implementation this year. And we will then be looking at capital, which again, while they handle separately from the budget discussion, discussion. For us, the big driver is these repair items that continue to come forward over time. And so we'll take an opportunity to highlight our collaboration with the Capital Planning Committee and look at a couple projects that are coming forward for Springtown meeting. So I think those will be the pieces that we look at. And then the secondary part of that was that you were seeking an opportunity to talk further about the air conditioning article, and I'll come back to my thoughts on that when we get down to item 10. And that's my report for tonight.
Daniel.
Good evening. The one update I want to give you is about something I think I mentioned last spring to you, but just to bring your attention to it again, that the tier focus monitoring effort that the Department of Education is in the process of working with us as a school system on it's got two phases to it. And just to refresh your memory, phase one was this self-evaluation that we were doing in the spring, where they're looking at special education programs, civil rights, our bullying policy, our licensure, and they're basically doing like an audit to make sure that we're compliant with state regulations and laws. And so we submit documents, which we did in the spring, and there were probably close to 100 documents that we uploaded to them. They review them, and then they critique them. And about a week ago, I had a conference call with Dr. Stevens and myself, and gave us some feedback. The things to work on before they come to do a site visit in November. So the good news is we're considered a tier 1 school system, which means that we're considered low risk. And so there's the involvement in terms of coming out to the school district is minimal compared to some other school districts, but yet they still are giving us some feedback and things to look into. And I'll just keep you more informed as we get closer to their site visit. There'll be like a press release that goes out to the community that's mandatory. And then there will also be like the special needs parents will be invited to participate in a session with the Department of Education evaluators that are coming out to the district. So that's going to be scheduled soon. Anyhow, that's the update on that.
Thank you. Anita.
Hi, everyone. Just one small update. Our Assistant Director of Buildings and Grounds started last week. His name is Tony LeMay. He's been doing fantastic thus far. He's been meeting with myself, Amber, and our Director of Buildings and Grounds just to get up to speed on all of everything buildings, capital projects, et cetera. So we're very excited to have him, and our team is complete now.
Thank you. Okay. Any comments or questions? All right, we'll move on. School committee reports. Allie?
So I don't have much to report because we're still getting settled into the year, but we have our first home football game this Friday night, so we're very excited for that. September 18th to 22nd, Fails is having a food drive for the Westborough Food Pantry, and they're going to celebrate with that with a school spirit day. And then Fails Family Fun Day and Hastings Fall Festival are in October.
Very good. Jakub?
Nothing to report today.
I don't have anything tonight either, thank you.
Sarah?
Nothing to report tonight.
Steve?
Yeah, I just have one thing to update. This dovetails what Daniel was saying. The session for the special ed parents for the tiered focus monitoring is October 25th from 6 to 7. It's held via Zoom. And so there's a link available on the CPAC Facebook page. You can also reach out to me if you're not a member of the Facebook group and you want to be provided with a link. This is a chance for parents to speak directly with Michael McDonald, one of the officials from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and they really want to hear from us. So I encourage all special education parents to participate. Thanks.
You, and I think in the last time we met, I had mentioned that we were going to discuss as part of the school building committee settlement issues associated with a contract for Fails. I think the committee successfully negotiated the endpoint monetarily with the project. We're waiting for all the bells and whistles to be settled in the sense of the dollar amounts, but I'm firmly assured that we will have money left as voted by the town meeting without the need for a request for any additional money, which when that paperwork gets settled, then we'll be able to also receive the final payment from MSBA in regards to the monies due us from that contract, which is approximately 5% of the MSBA's component settlement. So things look pretty good in regards to final settlement of not only monetary issues, but the remaining odds and ends that need to be completed on the project. So I guess I won't say any more until we finally know everything, but very good. Thank you. Okay, next item is citizens' requests. Anybody wish to come forward?
Really quickly on that.
Hello, Boyd Conklin, 8 Water Street.
Hang on a minute.
Boyd, we're not ready to begin yet. The chair is responsible
Yeah.
for organizing who gets to speak.
In regards, well, given that no one else is ready yet, but I will read the notice relative to citizens' requests, or if you have it in front of you, perhaps you can read it.
I can read.
Okay.
If you want. Yeah, sure. Okay. So as a reminder, we have a policy regarding citizens' requests, and some important pieces of the policy include that you must be a current resident of Westborough. Speakers are allowed to address the school committee about issues that are within the school committee's purview. Each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes to speak to the school committee, and written comments longer than 3 minutes may be presented to the presiding chair before or after the meeting. And you're welcome to hand additional comments to us in writing now, or you can certainly email them later. Public comment by residents at this meeting is not a discussion, debate, or dialogue between individuals and the school committee. It is an individual's opportunity to express an opinion on issues within the school committee's authority, and our role is to listen carefully to what you share with us tonight. Clapping, cheering, calling out, or any other noise following a speaker is not allowed. Additionally, I'd like to remind members of the school committee that when making a point of order, please address your concern to the chair. And so can I see a show of hands, please, of everyone who wants to speak tonight at citizens' requests? So 2, 3, 4. Okay, so you can decide the...
Okay, well, since Boyd is sitting there, we might as well start with Boyd.
Sure.
And then we'll go from front of the hall to the back of the hall in that order. Thank you. Go ahead.
Boyd Conklin, 8 Water Street. Okay, groomers, comprehensive sex education, 10-alarm groomer fire territory, expanding surveillance, i.e. data, to include pleasure. Point number 4 of the 7 essential components of comprehensive sexual education. Guttmacher.org cites default files report downloads, demystifying data handouts, _0.pdf. There are several learning recommendations related to pleasure in the UNESCO technical guidance, including describe ways that human beings feel pleasure from physical contact, to example, kissing, touching, caressing, sexual contact throughout their life, which is a learning objective for children in the age 9 to 12 years. Quote, state that sexual feelings, fantasies, and desires are natural and not shameful and occur throughout life, end quote, which is a learning objective for those 12 to 15 years. quote, understand that sexual stimulation involves physical and psychological aspects, and people respond in different ways at different times, end quote, which is a learning objective for those aged 12 to 15 years, and which includes key areas for those ages 15 and older that, quote, engaging in sexual behaviors should feel pleasurable and comes with associated responsibility for one's health and well-being, end quote. Friendship, love, and romantic relationships, UNESCO guidelines, 1 in 4 topics on the topics of relationships. There are 14 objectives related to friendship, love, and romantic relationships for children aged 5 to 8 years old. 10 objectives for age 9 to 12, et cetera, et cetera. Stop talking to kids about whether or not sex is pleasurable. This is not okay. This needs to stop. Groomer alarm is going off. Understanding more than sexual intercourse. Well, this is why they are teaching kids about having orgasm through anal sex in the school. Story broke in the last 2 weeks. The book Gender Queer, a central tome for groomer schools like Westborough. Sexuality is a healthy and normal part of everybody's life. Well, you know, no. Everybody's adult life, but you don't say that, do you? Generative needs, top down, bottom up. You guys have no responsibility. The needs of youth, you run your surveys to create them. Schools give very basic medical and biological information, and if you need additional information, they should be talking to their parents. Navigate relationships, no. Find additional resources for health and services,
You have
no.
had your 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Sir?
Ted Gilbert, 26 Charles Street, Westborough. Whoa, sorry. Today we are told that male and female are one and the same. This denial of male-female differences has led to the astonishing belief that men and women are not born male or female. They are whatever gender they say they are. Facebook went so far as to offer its users over 50 genders to choose from. The idea that gender identification is now a personal choice might sound enlightened to some, but it's actually a very anti-scientific view of one of the essential facts of life. Men and women are inherently different. Their brains are different. Their hormones are different. Their chromosomes are different. And of course, their bodies are different. No amount of peer-reviewed papers from gender studies departments can change this. But that won't stop the progressive elites who run our universities, news media, many of our biggest companies, and even our high schools and elementary schools from trying. For their efforts, women will pay an especially high price. That's because the men and women are the same argument invariably leads women to be judged against a male standard. Ironically, this quest for sameness is occurring at a time when science is telling us more emphatically than ever that we are different. So what your grandmother took for granted, men and women are different, science now confirms. For the tiny percentage of people who experience gender dysphoria, we should have nothing but compassion. We should do everything we can to help them or protect their dignity, but we don't need to overturn biologically defined sex differences to do so. But that's what's happening. Using the wrong pronoun at the office might get you fired. In Canada, it might land you in court. In mixed martial arts, as we have seen, it can lead to getting your head bashed in. Apparently, this is a small price to pay in a world where we must all genuflect to political correctness, such as biological sex is in black and white. But in virtually every instance, it is. The longer we allow the obvious to go unstated and undefended, the worse it will be for boys and girls and for men and women, but especially for women. The sexes are different. Rather than trying to quash this reality, which can only lead to more needless confusion and suffering, not less, we should step back and marvel at it and enjoy it. Male-female differences are among the most wonderful things in life.
Thank you. Okay. Please come forward.
Good evening. Paula Matthew, 20 Andrews Road. This is for Westborough School Committee and educators, and we represent a larger contingency of parents, over 30 families in town. So, Westborough students, are they falling among the stars or down a dark, deep hole? There is a time when the roles of parents and the roles of a teacher were well defined. Parents were responsible for the moral upbringing of their children, and teachers were responsible for instruction in academics, leaving the children with the responsibility to learn, to develop their abilities, and to think critically. Upon completion of their education, students had the knowledge and skill set to succeed as adults. Living in the best country in the world, they could reach for the moon and fall among the stars. Their future held promise. Parent, teacher, and student knew their places in the educational arena. Today, the roles appear convoluted, causing chaos and confusion for the child. Have parents relinquished their parental responsibilities, allowing schools to assume them? Or have schools overstepped their bounds, diminishing the parent's role? Neither are blameless, but herein lies the dilemma. What happens when there is a philosophical misalignment in values between home and school? What are the ramifications to the psyche of a child when these opposing values collide? Is it not essential that parent and teacher share the same standards for the mental and emotional health of a child? With education today, many parents nationwide see academics taking a backseat to ideologies disguised as social, emotional learning and identity. Instead of learning the ABCs of success, students are learning DEI and CRT, ideologies that instill confusion and doubt. Instead of a focus on intellectual discourse, the focus is on concepts such as identity and diversity, which have the common effect of instilling a sense of division rather than unity. Instead of reinforcing the values of this nation, which was founded under the motto, E pluribus unum, out of many, one, educators are undermining these values, and in doing so, they are undermining parents and splintering the family unit. For the sake of all our children, it is imperative that common ground be found, that parent and teachers work together for the health and well-being of all children, that education takes precedent over cultural ideologies that come and go. Otherwise, future generations will be fraught with insecurities, robbed of a productive adulthood, and affected by mental health and substance abuse issues. It is time to assess the impact of this diversity indoctrination, to question schools' role in the student's personal life, and to affirm the parents' role in education, so that children can fulfill their role as learners and become healthy, well-adjusted adults with the capabilities to reach for that moon.
Are you speaking to the same point, sir?
I am. Yes, I am. Can you hear me? So Mike Noonan, 4 Rosewood Place. I want to add some personal perspective to what Paula was commenting on. My wife and I moved to Westborough 20 years ago, and one of the things that attracted us to...
Give your name and address, please.
Sure. Mike Noonan, 4 Rosewood Place. When we moved here 20 years ago, we were attracted in large part to the high quality of the school system. But, you know, when we think about the experience that our kids have had in the last few years, I have one child who's a junior in the high school, I have 2 freshmen in the high school. There's a sense that things have shifted. And when my wife and I talk about their high school experience, what we talk about now is from a mental health perspective, getting our kids through the Westborough schools in one piece. And I think that's unfortunate for a couple of reasons. First of all, because these are important years for our kids academically. And second of all, because I think of all the parents and kids coming in behind them who maybe have a preconceived notion about what the Westborough schools are all about that doesn't align with reality. Because I can tell you that from a personal perspective, that has been my experience over the last few years. And I think the word that I would use to describe this is the word distracted. We seem, as Paula noted, to be distracted by things that have nothing to do with academics, things that are not advancing the education of our students, in a school system that, by all indications, is not racist and never has been systemically racist. So the question is, from a value perspective, where does DEI fall? Where does CRT fall? What is it getting us? Where is it getting us? My kids took a course last year at Gibbons called Global Issues. It was kind of a deceptively named class. And I thought it was a social studies class. But it turned out that it was kind of a laboratory for indoctrination. Because what my kids were learning in that class was all about the isms: classism, racism, gender. They were doing readings from Ibram Kendi, who was a quote-unquote philosopher, whose guiding principle is that past discrimination against blacks can only be remedied by future discrimination against whites. I can't speak for other parents, but from my perspective as a parent of 3 kids in this school, I don't want my kids to learn those things. And at the very least, I want to know that they're learning those things. I see transgender flags in the high school. I see a poster in the high school that talks about the evil chapters in American history. And I ask myself, why? What is this getting us? We see that the needle of academic attainment in the Westborough schools is starting to trail off. And we certainly see that mental health issues are skyrocketing. And when my kids come home from school, my 3 kids come home from school every day, that's exactly what I hear them talking about. Who's having issues with depression, who's having issues with anxiety, and all the rest. These weren't things that when I was in school we talked about or dealt with. When I was in school, we weren't being indoctrinated, we weren't being parented, we were in school to get an education.
Thank you. Your 3 minutes are up.
I'm Susan Reynolds from 50 Upton Road, and I'm speaking for other parents who won't speak. As concerned parents who profoundly care for the mental and emotional well-being of our children, we've come to the conclusion that our school system has lost its way and is heading down a very dangerous path. It is time to consider the need to, 1, restore reason and sound judgment. When a parent concerned with pornographic or racist material is accused of banning books, there is something inherently wrong. Children are dependents for a reason, and until they are 18, a parent has the responsibility to protect them from those things which do harm. Although some see no harm in sexualizing young children, a majority of parents do see the harm. This constant and relentless focus on the adult issues of gender, sex, race, and class is not central to education and not appropriate for children. Not only is this nation's moral compass slipping, it's losing empathy and compassion for differing points of view on these ideologies. It is no surprise then that such issues contribute to the decline in the mental health of our children. There is a dire need for rational, compassionate conversation among adults whose goal it is to do the very best for every child's well-being and to work together to realize those goals. Number 2, restore freedom of speech and transparency. Dissenting voices are currently silenced. From emails to social media outlets, proponents of these ideologies do an incredible job to either vilify those with differing views or minimize their ability to be heard. Many in Westborough remain silent because of this. More recently, when others voiced opposition to the masking of children and its disastrous effects, they were silenced. Those loud voices that claim to be against bullying do a superb job of bullying, which prevents balanced debate and discussion. Differing views should be welcomed. Censorship and restriction of free speech should not be. Let's end censorship, and transparency will follow. In closing, we have veered off America's path of freedoms and values. We, the parents, hope to avoid falling into an abyss by getting back on the right path of education that promotes critical thinking and debate. Except for the ignorant few, we are not a racist nation and most certainly not a racist town. Westborough is a very culturally diverse community. Stop punishing our children for the sins of their ancestors and start celebrating the life we share. Stop distorting education, start improving it. Stop preaching diversity, start promoting unity. Stop adding to the mental health issues, start addressing the issues that are creating them. Cultural ideologies that blur the role of parents and teachers must be examined. No government money and mandates should condemn our child to a life that questions their self-worth and their gender identity. Again, We want answers to these questions, and we request a clearly defined policy allowing all parents to feel safe bringing forth all concerns without fear of retributions from other in the town.
Thank you.
Okay. We do have copies of this, which I'll be happy to pass to everyone, and we appreciate that the principals are here too.
I believe we have one more person who wishes to speak. Yes.
Excuse me? Oh.
Perhaps two.
Mike Matthew, Westborough, 20 Andrews Road. I have a question of all of you. Why do you give people 3 minutes to talk and then cut them off? I think that's pretty rude. I think
It's our policy, sir.
yeah, but it doesn't need to be your policy. If somebody's talking and
Is
you
our
cut them off,
policy.
and you
It-
cut them off, wait a minute, I'm talking, Steve, and you cut them off, that is very
You don't
rude
have a right
and
to speak
discourteous.
before this committee except by virtue of the chair of the committee.
Yes, well, no, I'm a taxpayer in town,
You're welcome.
and I have a right to talk, and you don't have a right to cut me
Not
off.
in this forum, sir.
Sorry, I disagree with you. I think
Well,
that
that's
more
okay.
respect needs to be given to us as people, and you need to listen to us and not cut us off after 3 minutes. Thank you.
That was less than 3 minutes. Sir?
Nadio Nascondiglio, I live on Warren Street. My concern is that my 3-year-old daughter was in your early education center, and she brought home a report card. Well, not a report card. It's one of those we can't give a 3-year-old a report card, but it was an update on how she's doing. And she's graded on diversity, okay? Now, I've been told by people on this board that that doesn't happen. I've got the report card. I spoke to this principal, and she told me that white people won't understand. Exact words from her, okay? I wouldn't be here and telling you this if it didn't happen. It did. My child's biracial. Which part of her won't understand? It's ridiculous. It's become an insane asylum in the schools. And if you guys are letting this happen and you know about it, then you should all be stripped out of your positions and someone else can come in and take your place, because this is not right. You're dealing with people's children. They raised them, not you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, thank you. We'll proceed with our agenda. Discussion of the international trip.
Hello, everyone. How's the sound? Good?
Go ahead.
Thanks for having me tonight. My name's Susan Smith. I teach English at the high school. Last year, I took 30 students to Europe over April vacation, and this year I'd like to take students to Australia and New Zealand. Travel to those countries is longer, so the trip will extend a few days outside the April vacation timeframe. But altogether, it's a great cultural, natural, social learning activity for our students. We'll fly into New Zealand and out of Australia. And in between, the trip is jam-packed with experiences and activities, including a trip to a Maori village for a cultural dinner, a trip to an Aboriginal town, a geothermal hot springs park area, a skyline gondola in the city of Sydney, and last but not least, an excursion to the Great Barrier Reef for snorkeling with a marine biologist. I know that you all have information packets and have some of the itinerary for the trip, but I'm here to answer any questions if I can, and I hope you'll agree that this is a great trip for our students.
I do agree. It's certainly a great opportunity for kids to see, particularly in an English-speaking area, what differences there are in the world. I did review the itinerary and the visits that are proposed, and it certainly looks very interesting. Although it's expensive, it certainly is reasonable as compared to other things that one might try to do in a much shorter period of time with a fair amount of money. Having made, I guess, my initial comments, Yakub, any questions?
Yeah, just one question about the cost, the $6,000 cost, that's per student. Is it covered fully by the family or is it subsidized? And how are the students selected for the trip?
It is fully covered by the family, and students are, families are invited to a meeting, and they get information about the trip and then an opportunity to sign up if they want to do it. So we work with a tour company that will break down all the information, everything that comes with the costs, and all the safety policies and the insurance and all those things. And then the families have an option to, they can sign up tentatively for a small fee and then change their minds if they need to. And after that, it's pretty much a first come, first served for the signups. Sometimes last year there was some wait lists, and some people did drop out and then other people did sign up.
Is there any financial aid for the less affluent families available?
To my knowledge, there isn't at this time, although I do think it's part of something that we're all working towards, maybe.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think for this trip, not yet. So my assumption for now is that there aren't any scholarships or other kinds of subsidies.
Thank you.
Kristen?
This is just for the high school. And how many students can you take?
I don't think there's a limit, but I'm shooting for like 18 to 24.
Okay.
I think at some point it becomes an issue of buses, like how many can fill a bus and how much more logistically difficult it gets after a certain number of students. So I think the number is around 40 for that.
Okay. Yeah, I would imagine on a trip.
I'm open to last trip, I think we started with 22 and ended up with 30, just because it seemed to be more and more doable for more students as we learned more about it.
Yeah, I would think there's sort of an important number to have to keep everyone together on the same transportation or whatever, so.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Sarah?
So I'm hugely in favor of this trip because I went as a junior from Westborough High to Spain, and I think that was from the foreign language department, but it was the most memorable trip I've ever had. I mean, having taken Spanish for as many years as I had, now I don't remember how many that was, but we were really able to immerse ourselves into the culture there and, really get a feel of what we had been learning and then the use of language, et cetera. So I know that was from the foreign language department, but I imagine this is going to be just as rewarding of an experience for the kids. I think I had also had my daughter attend one of the meetings a year ago, and from what I recall, there is oftentimes a wait list, which just goes to show that it's a very popular program. So, if the students want it and the parents want it, then I think it's great.
Do you know, has this trip been offered in the past by the district? A trip to Australia specifically?
I've been at the school for 16 years, and I might not know all of them, but I don't recall any.
I don't think we've done Australia. I don't think we've done Australia, so this is a new trip for us.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about
I think it's a wonderful idea.
Galapagos is also very exotic, but yeah.
This is a longer trip, so it's a little bit longer because you're traveling a further distance, and so you're seeing an increase in expense. So, if you play out the percentages between like how much it costs for certain trips as you add days, you've added, they're ranging sometimes around 3,000. That's almost double that, but you've got a trip length that's beyond what we typically do, and it's a long trip. So, I think that again, there's two pieces of that can end up potentially limiting who can participate, which is why long-term we do have it in the strategic plan to start to look at establishing a a support fund to do offsetting for trips. We have seen in the past some fundraising. It's not particularly a piece, I don't think, at this time for this trip, but I think we'll see what kind of interest we have. And then we propose these along with many other options. And then, if people don't do this trip, they've got ones that might be more cost affordable or shorter. So we're hopeful to have kind of several choices.
The trip you did to Europe last year, was it through EF, Educational Tours?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, they have a good reputation.
France, Switzerland, and Germany.
Do you know what airlines you would fly?
I don't. They'll give us those details later. They have their whole system for bulk trips and different vendors that they work with. I think we Canada?
Air Canada?
Yeah. Yeah, last time.
Yeah, and the reason why I ask is that, there may be, quote, a package with some unknown outfit. I certainly want to know who the airlines would be that would be used for this.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely. Whether it's, a national airline or somebody who's got a very good safety record anyway.
Yes.
Anybody else have comments? So the issue before us is for the school committee to consider this and I guess take action as to whether we approve the trip or not.
I can make a motion to approve the trip to Australia and New Zealand for 12 days during April vacation.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. 500, thank you.
Will you come back and have the kids share? Thank you.
That's always the highlight.
The next item on the agenda is the school improvement plan review.
Thank you. So I'll do a brief introduction. It's a pleasure to have with us tonight the 6 principals of our schools here to share with you their school improvement plans. Each year we've done these. We had a hiatus during COVID where we were doing less of these larger presentations, so it's a return to some of that structure. And we've varied it over the years, whether or not they do a presentation. This year, the way we chose to frame this was to share them with you, let you review them, and provide more of an open conversation. A couple reasons for that. I think we've found over the last couple of years when they've been presenting that because a range of their goals are cohesive across the strategic plan, started to feel repetitive, and yet they each wanted to give you good time. So allowing you to have a more open-ended conversation with them to pull out areas you want to highlight or ask about seems a more authentic kind of opportunity for you to dig into those plans. Before we start, I'm going to just frame it by opening up. I'm going to have Daniel open up the strategic plan document that we share out to faculty and just kind of give you a framework that we use to guide supporting the work that goes on across the district. So you have individual school improvement plans, which are diversified to the age group and the areas of personal interest, and then also implementation of strategic plan goals. So when we work in the summer together over retreat with the extended leadership team, we come up with we lift out of the strategic plan, that larger document, the areas of focus. And you know that I report on those then at the mid-year report and the end of the year. And then at the building level, you have principals that are really on the ground developing those goals with a lot of personal areas of focus based upon their schools. So I just wanted to share with you the document that was created in a shared effort to look at all the goals from last year and where we wanted to continue with them in the year ahead. So I just want to frame their comments against how they fit in the cohesive larger picture. You can see that we'll continue looking at instructional differentiation and support through our universal design for learning work. This looks at making sure that faculty are providing layers of entry, student engagement, opportunities for diverse levels of challenge in their instruction, and we continue to focus on that through the strands of co-teaching. Our curriculum and instruction initiatives, you can see that we'll be continuing to move forward with the inquiry research work and junior, senior learning experiences being expanded, as well as looking at a whole range of curriculum initiatives that you've seen involved in the strategic plan. You can read this at your leisure. You see as well the green initiatives, which will continue to work to support the sustainability objectives of the town and of the state to try to participate, as we have 6 large buildings that use a lot of energy. And so we will continue to be strong participants in those goals. You'll see that we'll move into the implementation of the literacy program review that's K-12. And then if you scroll down, really focusing on our expanded leadership team, bringing them forward in the work, and you can see the highlights provided there. You see as well sustaining our work in wellness and relationships, our commitment to all of the understandings around marketing tools and recruitment, sustaining strong staffing. You'll look at the social emotional work that's been embedded long-term, looking at staff and student wellness activities before and after school, family engagement strategies that allow our families to feel supported by us, and affinity group opportunities across shared interests for faculty. Mental health work, we continue just to stay after, making sure that we're providing tiered supports for students who need more support from us. And around our communication goals, you see the relationship centered on implementing better communication around Parent Square, the Superintendent Spotlight work, community wellness guides, district newsletters, and just really looking at innovating all of that work. And lastly, you'll see pieces around updating the website, and really returning towards additional opportunities for parent coffees, school visits, and opportunities for seeing classrooms experiences up close for parents to have opportunities to see the daily work that their children are doing. Looking as well to enhance the opportunities for parent groups to volunteer in buildings and really get back into spaces where they feel close to instruction. And then around management and operations, of course, you see we continue a whole range of projects. These don't come as close to the school level. These are more district level, and I've included them for you to see. And we share those with faculty so they can see we're continuing to work on them. And the facilities work you see flows through both capital projects, but then internal work. So I just think it's important before we open up this discussion and welcome our principals to the table, and they can open up discussion with you so that you see how we continue to try to keep our work focused and clear so that people are getting the supports they need at the classroom level. So I'm going to turn it over to our 6 principals, invite them forward to join us. And I think while I know all of you. I'll take an opportunity for maybe each of you to introduce yourselves, and then we will open it up for an opportunity for you guys to generalize your conversations. We'll leave it informal so you can hop around by building. If you get stuck, I could guide you to say any questions about the high school, but I think again, I want to leave it to you to dive in based upon that. So why don't we start over with Jack and then have you guys just introduce yourselves, and then we can open it up to conversation.
Good evening. Jack Foley, Principal, Gibbons Middle School.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us. Julia DeGata, Principal at Hastings.
Hello. Thank you so much for having us. I'm Marianne Stannard, the Principal at Vales.
Hi, I'm Peter Gallitz, the Principal of the Mill Pond School.
Good evening. Brian Callahan, Principal at the high school. Thanks for having us here.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. My name is John Mendes. I'm the Principal at Armstrong Elementary School.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So I know they're going to turn it right back to you. We wanted to make sure you had a chance to see their improvement plans, and I guess we'd open it up to general kind of opportunities for school committee members to ask about them. You can go by school, you can do general questions, things, highlights of their plans that stood out to you, and questions you have.
I was just, first of all, thank you so much for being here. I know you've already put in a long day and a long week of work, so I appreciate the extra hours for you being here tonight. I did notice a lot of similarities between the 3 elementary schools, and I'm assuming, but I don't want to assume, that that's by design in order to keep consistency across your 3 buildings. Is there anything in those school improvement plans standing out that you think is unique to your building that might not, I noticed a few things like facilities-wise might be different and unique to your building. Is there anything else that you think might stand out that you could mention?
I guess I would say one thing that was wonderful that came out of COVID was the connection of our K-3 team. We worked closely together throughout COVID and have been able to maintain that connection throughout. So we are about as aligned as you can get being in 3 different buildings. And so, yes, our improvement plans are based off of the strategic plan and very much aligned with each other. So they're very similar. There might be like little things like we had like where people are in like gardens outside and things like that. But very much in alignment with one another, especially with curriculum and all. So
Yeah, and I did notice I think because of Fales Construction, there was an addition of technology at Hastings and Armstrong, like TV screens and monitors and things, as to help welcome the community and to highlight student work and things like that. So that's exciting, for sure. And I had one more question, Mr. G. I think there's a new rotation schedule at Mill Pond. I just wanted to hear a little more about it and how it's going.
Sure. Yes, we are in our first year of executing a 6-day rotation. Really, this only affects our specials and our activity period block. All the other rest of the day remains the same. So it's not a significant change to our daily schedule by any means. Students have the same amount of math and in social studies and science and ELA time, lunch and recess. Everything structurally stayed the same. What it allowed for us to do is to be able to have a 6-day rotation. One of the pushes for it has come from our activity period block, which is so many things go on during that activity period block with music, special ed services, tier 2 supports for math and reading, that we really wanted to have, instead of giving us 5 days, oftentimes where if you miss a Monday, you miss the same thing every time. Giving us a 6-day rotation allowed for students, especially students who might want to do more than one of those things or need more than one of those things, to get more options involved. And get more support and not miss the same thing repetitively over and over again. So that was really kind of a push for our interventionists. We're really looking for that for a little while. It also allowed for us in our specials block to create a 6 special that the students rotate through. Again, kind of alleviating that. If you miss one certain day of the week, you always miss. If you we miss a lot of Mondays due to holidays, you would always miss music, and we would have classes that would be significantly behind compared to other classes at that time. So it allows for that rotation to exist. It also allowed for us to build a 6 special, which is actually kind of split into 3. And it's kind of 3 trimesters where the students are able to get makerspace class, which is something that we've been really trying to include, a health class, and a 3D dimensional art class, where they kind of have taken part of an art curriculum that was already there, but kind of section it off for it to be its own sculpture-y class. So it really allowed for us to create both of those, but still maintain the nice schedule we have.
I appreciate the complexity, I'm sure, that went into building that schedule and staffing that schedule and figuring it out. But I do think that it will allow kids to be able to access even more and not feel like they're held back because they chose a certain instrument to play or a club to be involved in. So,
exactly.
Yeah, I think that's great. All right, I look forward to hearing how it goes throughout the year.
So.
Yeah, good.
1.5 rotations.
We've been talking about the Mill Pond schedule since I got here. I mean, it was like, I think the first year that when Suzanne was there, they started looking at it. So it feels like this rotational design, which they finally really landed on, fulfills kind of what they had been chasing, where kids don't feel split and we can, slow down parts of their day and focus it. So I'm really pleased with what they did with it.
Yeah, thanks.
Hello, thank you for coming here. I haven't met all of you in person yet. I have a few questions to some of you. Well, first of all, with the elementary principals, I heard for some people in town that, FAILS, everybody's jealous of FACE now. It's a brand new building. Do the other two schools feel like you're missing something by not having that brand new building?
No, we're very excited for FAILS, and we continue to, as we were sharing when Kristen was asking her questions, really focus on aligning our 3 buildings. And so in following in FAILS' development, we've added smart boards to our classrooms, TV foyers, we've painted, we've lifted our spaces as well, just so our student experience is parallel across the 3 schools, because that's the ultimate goal, that our students have that same experience regardless of which K-3 school they're in. So we're very excited for FAILS and the development of FAILS, and we're continuing to lift parts of our building as well to make sure that we're in line with what's been added to FAILS.
I think after watching Mrs. Stannard live through the construction, they're perfectly happy with the buildings that they have.
FAILS is absolutely gorgeous, and I can't thank you.
You want one too?
Yes. Can't thank you enough for the new playground. It is absolutely dynamic.
Awesome.
All of our students are thoroughly enjoying the shaded area. On those very hot days earlier this month, the first of those hot days, we were able to go out and be totally fine, because that is complete shade for the whole recess. Because of the design, it's a unique design, and it really is beautiful. Thank you so much.
Then my question will be to you. I'm sorry, I forgot your name from FAILS.
No problem. Stannard.
Will be, because you are in this brand new building, built with the principles of sustainability, can you leverage that in your education towards the kids too, while you're in that building?
Yes, and we are working to look through how we do that. We have the ability to start looking at the geothermal work as well as the solar panel work. There's a panel, like a dashboard, that we can work to have students understand to some degree. And even as of, was it last night? Before that, I was talking with a parent after the FAILS parent group meeting who works in geothermal, and we're going to get together and do a little bit of talking too more about ways we can incorporate them. While the construction was going on, we actually had one of the folks that helped to design the geothermal system come in and talk to our second graders too. So yes, it's something we want to leverage and make an important part of what we're learning at FAILS.
Thank you.
Great question.
Now I have a question about, last question about the high school. In your document, you mentioned co-teaching and teachers helping teachers. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Basically, we have a couple of teachers who have gone through some training at the graduate college level in which they can observe their peers and provide feedback on instructional practice and assessment work and curriculum development. So we're fortunate enough to have, a pretty robust co-teaching program, and we have for over 20 years. And we're applying that teachers helping teacher model to our co-teachers. So rather than having a paid consultant come in or an administrator, someone that's not as connected to the classroom experience as the teachers themselves, the teachers are helping one another through their own professional learning. So it's quoted there because it's an actual model on how to encourage continuous improvement.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sarah?
So I have a question for all of you. You can, whoever wants to answer it or has any information, please chime in. My question is related to the implementation of SEL into the classrooms and how your experience has been. So it's a multi-pronged question in terms of how your experience has been with the success of integration, the results from, trying to implement these competencies in the classroom, and what have you seen as a result, if you've seen anything, or if we're too early to have data on that, how the teachers have been responding to how it's being incorporated. I imagine it's going to be different for every single one of you, or at least for the elementary school versus the middle, and then the high school is going to have a totally separate model. But I'm really quite interested in this because I also would like to know if this is a success in terms of how it's being implemented and whether we're gaining from it and what we want to gain from it.
Steve. So at the middle school, we have an advisory block. And in our advisory block, our homerooms meet for an extended period of time once every 2 weeks. So every other Wednesday, our homerooms meet for half an hour. And our homeroom teachers at that point follow the Trails to Wellness curriculum that is same K through 6. And it really helps, especially with our 7th graders, getting the year started off in terms of creating a safety net for the kids. And it works on a different topic throughout the course of the year in 7th grade and 8th grade, and it's a very, very defined curriculum. Additionally, in terms of our ability to address SEL components in our other classes, one of our major concerns, and one of the things that I share with the captive audience whenever I can is cajoling our parents to make sure that they're continually checking social media and the phones. And we have the opportunity to have our counselors go in our global issues class and speak to the kids about social media and about phones and about the dangers, the benefits, and also the challenges of, social media kind of gone wrong when we're, oftentimes dealing with situations where, it's a group chat with 25 kids with no supervision and they're all 13. Sometimes that can go off the rails a little bit, but we have the opportunity with our structure, both with our advisory program as well as with our counselors having the ability to co-teach some lessons with our curricular folks to really get into and address some of the topics that are a pressing concern for us, and for us at our age level, it's definitely social media and the phones.
I'll add on a little bit there too. I think one of the things that's been most evident for us kind of at the intermediate level, especially with, as you said, in the 4th or 5th year now, seeing some of the students who were at the 3 different K-3 schools start to come through our building, is the common language that exists. And, within our building, which having, 41 different classrooms, being able to use these curriculums, the concepts that we're talking about are not new. These are concepts that have been taught, in buildings for so long.
I'm just going to interrupt you for a second. Do you mind just stating what the main competencies are? Because the competencies are the concepts, correct?
Right. So,
if you can state them.
Right. So, the main idea is that they follow the ideas of, character building, problem solving, and really relationship building for students and making good decisions. And so much of that we already integrate, as Jack was just saying, into our curriculums and in different places. But to have a common language that the teachers can work together on, they can talk to a 2nd grade. We have students still quoting things that they learned in 2nd grade from the different schools, and they're able to bring those into the conversation. And so I think that's what we have found to be the most beneficial to us. And we have 2nd Step that comes up through our school, and then we start Trails as they go into Gibbons. But they're both founded on the same Castle competencies. So we're really benefiting from that. The conversations we can have as professionals are just so much more aligned that we can just build our kind of our unity of our school that much better.
Yeah, at the high school, we take a little bit more of a streamlined approach because of the work that's done at the elementary levels and intermediate and middle school levels. We have 7 SEL moments throughout the course of the year. So each class that a student has for once throughout the year, so period 1 all the way through period 7, we take 10 to 15, 20 minutes sometimes and have teachers in those core or elective classes take the SEL objective and incorporate it into content objective that they're doing in that particular class. So for example, what's common is a math teacher will use a problem-solving competency or a perseverance skill and incorporate that lesson into what they're doing in that math class. So it's a little bit more embedded into the core curriculum of these classes. We do 7, they're 20 minutes, so about 140 minutes a year on these SEL competencies. And we certainly have trained teachers that have wanted to be trained in how those core competencies match those academic objectives. And so we've actually, at the high school, done a nice job of identifying those 5 SEL competencies and some of those skills that are inherent in that, like problem solving, decision making, self-management, self-awareness, all of those types of competencies. What is the academic skill that can be learned by doing that in a specific content area? So we're not necessarily doing something separate in place of math or science or history. We're incorporating it, embedding it into those content objectives quite seamlessly. Because, solving a math problem requires perseverance, right? And that's basically the skill, the SEL skill that the math department sort of has adopted. Self-awareness, self-management, that's done in some of the humanities classes where you're doing character analysis. What made that person, decide to take that action? For example. So those are the ways that the high school's using the SEL competencies.
Just to explain from the elementary perspective, kind of where the foundation starts. And so kindergarten to 3rd grade, every child's classroom every day starts with a morning meeting. And a lot of the SEL work and the SEL competencies that we do happen within that morning meeting structure. All of our classrooms are using the 2nd step curriculum to teach the social emotional program, and that's why Peter was sharing when our students get to 4th grade, they have this common language now because those skills build from kindergarten to 1st to 2nd to 3rd. So once a week, each classroom takes a longer period of time to do a dedicated SEL lesson around those competencies, and then pieces of that lesson are embedded throughout the child's day, specifically at that morning meeting time to really develop those skills.
The lessons look like scenarios that present a problem, and the teacher teaches strategies around, what that problem is. Children role play. They'll get into peers. They'll role play what the problem is, talk through the strategies together, and hopefully those play out on the playground as well, or at lunch, or during some more of the unstructured times at the early childhood level.
Yeah. There's pictures that are held up, and so children will look at a picture and they're learning to kind of read the room or read the situation and observe what they're noticing about maybe someone's face and things of that nature. So it's learning how to be a learner, so how to focus and attend. It's taking turns. It's problem solving how to lose gracefully. Those are the concepts that we're talking about. You asked, how are staff feeling about it? I think they're feeling really good about it. I think in the beginning there was, with any new curriculum, there's a little bit of nerves and not wanting to sound, because they're holding up this, it's somewhat of a scripted, curriculum. I think the most nerves were kindergarten, using the puppets and feeling comfortable using the puppets.
And singing the songs.
Yeah. But we're past those nerves, so that's all going well. I think they feel very comfortable, and I think we see that common language paying off.
I think they find it nerve-wracking if we happen to be visiting and we walk in and they're singing. That's a hard push.
If I could address those 2 questions that you had to Sarah at the high school level. The teacher and the students partner up on how to sort of best deliver, that particular skill that day. Some teachers are much more comfortable. Allie can attest to this probably. Some teachers are much more comfortable delivering that lesson and finding the connection to the academic objective that I was mentioning. Others are not. There's a comfort level to the art of teaching, of course, but working with their students and having that that partnership that's developed on day one certainly helps get through some of those more challenging objectives and things like that. And it varies from, sometimes there's teachers that take 10 minutes to do it, and then others that might take the full 20. But that's the beauty of it. It's reading the room in the moment and delivering what is in the best interest of students at that point. The second piece was, do we find it to be successful? I would say yes, just through casual observation, because what the SEL is doing at the high school level, and I'm sure it's at the other levels too, it's enhancing the academic success that students are experiencing in the class. When they can personalize a chemistry concept in a way that means something to them, they're more apt to engage in that chemistry lesson, more apt to learn and internalize the skill or the content that lesson is designed to do. So when they're feeling confidence and when they're feeling like it's okay to make a mistake, I'm gonna keep trying and I'll see that pay off in a math problem that I referenced earlier, that leads to success. So I think it's working, I do.
And as far as the integration that you guys mentioned, and I think mostly it's the high school that, so they're not stopping class and then delivering a speech and then moving on. This is being integrated into whatever the material that's being, because it's a competency, it's a skill essentially that they would need to be using in other parts of their life. And so it's being built. I mean, am I understanding it correctly?
That is the goal, absolutely. I'm not in every classroom. I'm actually presenting the lesson over the loudspeaker at the beginning of the period in terms of what the theme is and, go ahead, take the next 15 to 20 minutes and present. But teachers are using it, as I understand and have seen, as more of an introduction to the work that they're going to be doing that day. And not to put Hallie on the spot, but I think that's the general sense of how our teachers are using the SEL moments. Is that right?
Definitely.
Yeah. So it's one and the same,
I think a couple pieces too, just to kind of round out as we look at this, and I think one of the how do we know, we look at that Metro West survey data to see there's a couple benchmarks. Do students feel like they have an adult they're connected with in the building whom they trust, and do they feel that they belong? And we look at their anxiety levels. So you do have benchmark data that we track, and we rotate that back in front of you for presentation, and we look at it against a trajectory of, again, a whole variety of impacts. You can't necessarily, place it against the SEL. Two things for context. I mean, I think I'm entering into my 10th year here, and when I came to Westborough and when my children started out, and they're much older than these experiences, Westborough already had embedded very clear commitments to working around raising kids who are empathetic, aware. The keys to when we look at the middle school, the keys to character work was well in front of the beginning of the definitive kind of language of SEL. That was done under Renee Hatherley years ago and was very values-centered. We also used Open Circle and Responsive Classroom and morning meetings and getting to know you activities. Those are all the embedded structural norms of what were SEL. If before it became galvanized into a broader organized approach when they saw mental health issues really escalating during COVID, really, if you look at the window. We'd been well at it for a long time, and the move to a structured curriculum flowed from teachers' interests in recognizing that they felt that we had a lot of different things going on, and they thought that a more cohesive language would give us a better traction to actually see progress with kids who actually needed to work on those skills. I think the areas where you see it layered in, where it was less definitive, was the middle school and the high school. But when you do your NEASC and when you do your state level review, they expected to see crew-based small group teamwork at middle school 6 or 7 years ago. We were expected to start to layer it in so that all students had small group opportunities to forge relationships. So all of this work converges both across goals at the state level and then us getting better at our work. Like, we were doing lots of good pockets of those pieces. All we did over the last 4 years was centralize it with kind of a better curricular focus. And so I feel that we are in a good place. I think it's important to recognize that these are practices that have long lived in the well-established culture of Westborough, and we want to bring an appropriate level of attention to them, but they don't consume us. It's one important part of our work, but if you look at what we heard from middle school and high school was that students were feeling disconnected and they needed more personal time on their emotional wellness. And so it was our job, both as a school committee and as a district, to respond to the feedback that we're getting about 6 years ago that we needed to do more personal connection work with students. So this is the outcome of that work. So I do feel as a district that we have moved in a direction that makes sense. And I think, concerns about what's captured in all of that, from comments we hear, from the discussions we have ongoing, we want to continue to be clear about what are we teaching, what are we working on. And that's not to say that we know nothing is perfect. Like you're going to have experiences in different classrooms where it's an awkward lesson, and you're going to have experiences in classes where it's fundamentally just like part of the fabric of the class. So that's just the reality of you're working with a lot of human beings. I think they've characterized the work accurately to what we're doing. I think we then just use the feedback loops we get from faculty and students to keep refining, and working on it.
And reminded us about the Mill Pond used to be the character education kind of epicenter. And that was going back 15 years or so. And when I transitioned from the high school over to the middle school, there was already, and that was 14 years ago, there was already a very, very well-established tradition of an advisory program. And that advisory block has always been there, and it has, to Amber's point, we've just tried to give the kids a more common experience, such that everybody's getting the same experience and a much more, so there's not a kind of a hodgepodge. And it's much more coordinated.
Great discussion. This is the kind of stuff we wanted to give you an opportunity to highlight and to ask questions about. And I think, this is your major portion of tonight. These are the people that run the buildings that your children are in that serve our community. And it's a rarity to have them here for you to have an open-ended conversation with them, to ask them anything you want to ask them. And I appreciate that they're kind of freewheeling here for you to just answer whatever you want to bring forth. Are there other areas you want to highlight? Keep going.
I did have a question. First, thank you for coming and thank you for all the hard work. I applaud you for how closely you've aligned the school improvement plans with the district strategic plan. I also took notice of the emphasis that's put on universal design of learning, so I applaud you for that. My question would be, what do you see as the biggest obstacle to fulfilling the improvement plans in your respective schools? Not all of you need to answer, but I'd just be sort of curious what you see as the major obstacles or impediments, if there are any.
I don't know if it's an obstacle, but I'll say the biggest challenge, and I think if you surveyed my whole building, you'd hear the same thing, is time. This is pretty hardy, and it's and that's what we want, though. We want to push ourselves. We don't want to do an improvement plan that's easily checked off and easily done. So I think the biggest obstacle will be, how do you do it all in a day's work or in any day's work? But I think we do have very talented workforce and a wide workforce. So I think that's the biggest challenge will be, how do we get all the hands working on this together so we can accomplish it?
So my one question is simply, how will you evaluate yourselves in terms of how successful you were in terms of levelizing between schools, as well as the performance that you wish to get in your various categories that are on the list? What do you think?
I'll take measure ourselves. We have some pretty high standards, and we have great opportunities throughout the course of the year to hold each other accountable, hold our staffs accountable. Amber holds us accountable. We report out on these things monthly. You see it a couple of times in the strategic plan. Our teachers will tell us, our students will tell us, at least at the high school level. And we take that feedback and we recognize where we did very well, and we put something on the following year as a way to improve. I would add, to what Peter said, certainly time, but I would also add that, stamina could be an obstacle. I mean, our teachers and our staff and this team here, as well as the central office team, work really, really hard to almost in a perfectionist kind of way to meet what we put down on these pages. And daily we're talking with one another and our staff and students to make sure that we're meeting what we say we want to meet, which is a great level of accountability. That personal, local accountability is the best kind.
I totally agree with what Brian just said. I also would say our school councils are a great support to us in monitoring where we're at and seeing, oh, we need to pick up this ball. This one's not moved far enough. So school council is a tremendous support in tracking where we're at and, again, checking with each other.
Yeah, I'll say, I mean, I've been in a couple of different districts and a part of a couple of different strategic plans, and I've run into it before where you visit it once and then you visit it again 12 months later and you're like, oh, we didn't do these couple of things. What I have noticed here in my 5-6 years here is how regularly we do come back to this document. So that's why things don't fall off. It's not once a year. It's multiple times throughout the year. And like Brian said, even daily sometimes where you're revisiting these things with different groups, whether it's school councils, our principals meetings, our leadership team meetings. And it really does allow us to make sure that nothing ever falls too far.
And sorry about that. We're looking at it through multiple lenses. So we're looking at student experiences and if we've accomplished it through those, but we're also looking at it through our data. We're constantly assessing our kids. So a lot of our teaching and learning initiatives are rooted in data as well and looking at how our students are progressing in relation to that goal area. And so we use lots of different pieces, I think, to assess and reflect on our work in collaboration with all the teams that everyone else has talked about.
As well as surveys from staff and families that give us great
feedback. The calibration is ongoing, and it just takes on a life of its own. We calibrate in many different ways all year long, from central office being in our buildings, talking with us about what is going on and what is good and what problems have arisen, as well as the successes and the celebrations. So one voice, one message is what we're striving for, and the calibration is real.
You asked a great question, Steve, and it was a very UDL question in terms of asking us to identify what our barriers are. And that's the first question that we ask our staff, and that's the central point of it. But I think, as you noted, all the plans are made off of the district strategic plan, are drawn right from it. There are no surprises, there are no mysteries. These are the things that we're working on a daily basis. So this is the work, and the work is reflected in the strategic plan. So the UDL plans that everybody's working through, we're doing professional development. We have a lot of work going on this Friday. So on any given week, we're going to be checking off or working towards a lot of the things that are in that strategic plan, because this is the work that is in front of us, and this is the work that we're doing right now.
And I'll speak personally again to Steve's question about measuring. I've got to turn and see this incredible, talented group of people, twice a month. And, when Peter had explained about his rotation, it was the high school that I believe gave a 0.2 FTE to help solve that problem. So that level of collaboration goes, to the heart of how good we can be.
Anybody else?
I just want to say thank you for rolling out Parent Square, and I know it's a huge initiative to take on something new like that, but Yakub shared at our last meeting like how helpful it is just to have everything in one place, and the messages are coming to me more, which is good, having a high schooler who you don't always get the messages. So, and to have them on my phone versus sitting in my inbox where they can just get buried, just prompts me to go into my inbox and look or just stay on top of things. So, yeah, we're really enjoying it.
On that note, my question would be, how does it look at your end, and how do teachers look at parents' career? Do they like the change? I'm sure that it's a big change compared to all the years before.
I'll speak to that one. We're using it a lot, and I think right now, I think the biggest thing I'm hearing is just how much it can do, and how it's a wonderful feeling. Right now, I think it's a little overwhelming, being beginning of the year, but I think it's overwhelming in a way where it's so user-friendly that there's some things that you can do very easily, just things that are just almost replacements of other ideas that we used to do. And then some of our, frontier and kind of people that want to push it are finding so many other ways to utilize it. So I think the first reaction is pleasant surprise at how user-friendly it is. I think anytime you adopt a new software, there is that massive like, uh-oh, what are we putting ourselves into? So I think that's the first thing that we're hearing from teachers is, oh, yeah, this makes sense. A lot of it is done through PowerSchool, and it's continuously updated, so they don't have to update email lists. That's updated for them. A lot of those types of things are just, they're kind of pleasantly surprised to run into. And I think, as we learn more, there's a lot more that it offers, and it's all centrally located, which is so helpful for families.
Yeah, it's just easy to see all the teachers. I mean, I don't know if teachers are getting more communication or less communication through it, but it's just nice because sometimes on the website you can't find, the contact list, or a new teacher comes in and then it's just updated immediately. So it's just a great thing that we were able to adopt this year. So thank you.
Anybody else? Very good. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much.
All right, enjoy the night.
All right, thank you, guys. Go home.
Come anytime.
Yeah. Of course, we would love to have you stay, but please go home.
Please go home.
Thank you, all of you.
Okay, well, the next item is on the agenda. We actually dealt with it at the first meeting after the election, and that was the distribution of various subcommittees and things that we do as a member of the school committee. At that point, I had recommended, and I basically had said that the various and sundry things would stay the same, but this one really didn't get dealt with. I have historically been the school committee delegate to the MASC and have dutifully gone, I guess, for a number of years. And I will continue to serve again if you wish to do that, but we do need to vote the committee delegate.
Well, I would make a motion to have Steve Durrett serve as our official school committee delegate to MASC.
I will second.
All right, well, I'm happy to continue to do that.
Thank you. I think you...
And I know that a number of other committee members will be going this year as well.
I know this adds a couple extra meetings onto your agenda.
One or two, yeah.
One or two, but you do have a really good grasp of like the process of how things are brought to the floor at MASC and how things are happening, and so I appreciate you doing that again this year.
All right, so all those in favor? Aye, 500. Which then brings us to the working part of this discussion, which is the mass resolutions for MASC being in MASS, which are the resolutions of the group. And they're interesting this year in the sense that, as you know from the list of them, they are created by not only the staff of the MASC, but also by school committees who find in their business during the year that things they would like to see changed, and put it forward to the MASC to then have a recommendation to give to the legislature. And I'm trying to find my list of them somewhere. And so I guess I'll open it to the floor for anybody who would like to talk about them.
And just to explain process, because we're a member of MASC, we as a school committee vote like our support or not support of these, and then all of that support and everything comes to the MASC meeting, and then it's shared, and then MASC like kind of adopts these resolutions as something that they like think that we all stand for. So you can see who sponsors them. Some are like school committees, some are sections, divisions of the MASC group. And so what we do is we usually spread these out over a couple of meetings, and we take a look at them now, and then probably our next meeting, we would vote like our approval as a committee of them, and then we report that to MASC. But yeah, they are interesting, and they're different every year. I was very interested in resolution number 2.
I thought you might be, yeah.
Regarding investigations and recommendations for transportation bidding procedures, which I think is something that the state really needs to look at. And every school district is facing transportation issues, contract issues, the escalation of cost.
And by the way, one of the other things we could do is offer amendments to this if we wish to do so,
Yep.
On behalf of Westborough School Committee. And so that resolution 2 deals with the effectiveness of bidding school bus contracts, which I'll just read the therefore be it resolved section, which is the action section of each one of these things. That the Massachusetts Association of School Committees prevail upon the Office of the State Auditor to investigate the bidding practices of school transportation providers and to present such findings and recommendations as may be necessary to contain cost in more efficient transportation services available for public schools. And the point they raise in their whereas is that frequently only one bidder would be found for each contract offered. And I think we've all had suspicions that there's some collusion going on as to who bids what school district. They seem to have a round-robin contract over contract.
Are we going to vote on each resolution
Eventually.
individually?
Yeah, not tonight, though.
I understand, but eventually it'll be.
Yeah, we call up each one, and then we all have a chance to say whether we support it or not, and then we report that out. And then resolution number 3 on regional transportation is somewhat related, but I feel like regional transportation is on here a lot because they do face a lot of more issues because a regional school is busing kids from farther away. And then to get that number of buses and to get kids to school and back home efficiently and quickly, it's, I think, just more complicated with a regional school district.
Which one was that?
Number 3.
3, yeah. And number 1 deals with Metco, which is, of course, is something different than what we deal with. But to the extent that the concept in each one of these things, may be viable to us in terms of policy, general policy of MASC to support others as well, when the issue is simply what's fair, what's effective, and what help that the legislature can provide to, in effect, districts for which we wouldn't benefit or lose, for that matter. But I think generally what's fair is a good thing to consider when we offer our opinions and vote on any of these particular articles.
Struck by resolution 7.
Yeah, I was just gonna wait for somebody to bring it up. Go ahead.
It recommends, here, I'll read it. Therefore, be it resolved that MASC urges Massachusetts, well, I'll cut to the chase, to enact a moratorium on MCAS testing effective immediately. And that they urge Massachusetts to develop an alternative to the high-stakes MCAS tests.
Well, one of the things that was, this is now an old, if you will, an old issue with school committees is the MCAS. But its purpose, and it may have already been served, it was to create a balance across the state of measurement of performance. And I think that what is then discussed in here is that perhaps that has happened, but that the state takes the role of the school committee in certain places where cities and towns are underperforming in being, let's say, generally an average or better teaching facility. And I think that may be the issue behind some of the points that are made why they wish to do this. But I think, a fair testing process that actually tells you how good a school system is something that was planned, at least, when MCAS was created. Perhaps it's not doing that anymore, but, again, we'll talk about this when it comes forward. I wonder about 8, and it basically says safe storage of firearms. And the reason why it's here is the perspective of if you don't have safe firearm storage and it gets into the hands of minors who might take it to school, then there's an issue with school committees. And again, what's fair and right probably is included in this one. As to, what our issues would be.
Yeah, I mean,
Particularly since those school systems that hadn't an opportunity to protect themselves found out that they were in dire need of something like this.
Yeah, the whole resolution is about communicating to parents and guardians about the importance of secure firearm storage to protect children and teens. And to have them understand legal obligations consistent with Massachusetts safe storage law. So it's
But again, the issue is the laws are there already.
Yep.
And I guess I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, we can talk about that for sure. So
Anybody else have comments
Interesting
on this list? I'm sure we'll have some more. Okay. What's next?
town warrant article.
I think it's good for you guys just to continue to look at them, and we'll have more discussion on them. We have some other opportunities for you to ask questions about them and get a range of feedback before you vote. I think there's some interesting ones here, and I think your votes matter, and that you send Steve forward with, thoughtful consideration to the floor of the discussion. And I think for those of you that attend the MASC conference, it's good to embed in there and see that process and shadow Steve's representation of that work forward from the district. So I think, it's going to be an interesting set of discussions this year. I mean, if you just look at some of those resolutions. So I would want us to have opportunity to have a little bit more discussion about them between now and when you vote. So thank you.
Okay, next one is the discussion of the town warrant article on the high school gym air conditioning.
So I would begin by one or two pieces. There's a couple kind of process pieces that we want to walk through. You had wanted at your preliminary discussion when we brought forward the cost of the bid, when we split the bid, and I'm just doing a quick review because you never know who's watching, that when we went to split the bid between the replacement of the chiller system from the adding of the air conditioning, we've moved forward using the ARPA funds with the chiller system replacement for the high school, and that left the air conditioning of the two gymnasiums, and the cost for that came in at $2.248 million, and the sticker shock of that, has brought us pause to revisit it against the broader discussions. You asked for some additional data, and so I just want to thank Anita, and she can speak to it. If you have questions, I see this as informational for you, to share with you information about the depth of use of those spaces and the categorization of when they tend to run hot, right? And it's not just the heat, it can be the lack of kind of like moving air refreshment. We do keep the circulation on, but certainly there can be some issues in those spaces. I was clear at the time that we brought it forward that, and I want to make a comment on my recommendation to you, and your vote is your choice. You wanted to then gain a further discussion with the broader boards. So when I spoke with Christy, she thought it was most appropriate that you could use the summit. And so tomorrow you'll get an opportunity to hear the broader range of feedback on that article and to contribute your own thinking to the discussion. It's, the budget summit is an opportunity for good conversation because you're all there. And then you can decide if you want to recommend moving the article forward, pulling it from the warrant. I mean, you really have two choices. You do have time to pull the article because they haven't closed the warrant yet. After the warrant is closed, your only choice would be to pass over it or to move on it. So we've given you the data. I think tomorrow's conversation will be important. We will reframe some of that, but your knowledge of what you now know about the use of the gyms, the cost, the process will allow you to participate tomorrow at the budget summit if people have questions. Anita and I will represent it in terms of framing it, and then you can hear what their thoughts are. I believe at the end of that meeting, you could choose to vote. You'll be in session and you might choose then, after listening them, to go ahead and act on voting to pull the article or move it forward. I think that makes sense that you would want to do it at the end of the summit because otherwise the warrant closes on the 26th, the following Tuesday at the Board of Selectmen. My opinion is that it's cleaner to go to town meeting with the warrant article pulled as opposed to passing over because then it sparks conversation and stuff and it feels confusing to some people. That's an opinion, and I defer to you guys who know a lot about town meeting. I've been looking at all the data as well. Anita and I have been doing a lot of work looking at the number of strategic projects that we have for repair. All of the dollars for those are higher than even this number. So we have those roof replacements and managing the repairs of Hastings. I feel those need to be our priority, and after a lot of consideration, my recommendation would be that we cycle this back into capital and push it several years out. We have the opportunity with the design in place and to Steve's wisdom, that because when we do design, we make no losses, like that design will hold. We would have to go back out to bid and we would incur that cost. But the actual design and all the work you've done to date is not wasted. It's moved us forward. You're now getting new chillers and we have a full design of what we would do with the air conditioning units. My recommendation would be that we cycle it back in through the capital process and work with the capital committee to look at where it falls most appropriately. Again, my job is to bring forward to you what we need to get done and to give you advice based upon what that learning is, but you, like my role is similar to yours, but you carry the weight of that vote. So that's where I'm landing right now, and I just wanted to kind of open it up for any questions or conversation. I don't know that there's much left to figure out. It's all fairly self-evident, and I just wanted to give you an opportunity to have any conversation tonight before you go into the meeting tomorrow. So I would turn it back to Steve, who's kind of tracked all of this really well.
Yeah, obviously, we had asked Anita to pull together some data on the use of this particular gym, which you have. The only thing that I would ask, if you can do it quickly, is summarize the time. There's the columns in your information of the time of use in terms of hours and minutes in say, the average year, which I think is then indicative of how heavily used the gym is.
Steve, it's in the, she has a spreadsheet.
Yeah, but there's no total.
Oh, okay.
If you, whatever it is, it's one of the middle columns.
Yeah, it says hours and minutes.
Yeah,
You just want like a total.
Obviously, there's a whole bunch of people that use it based on that list, but I was just wondering how many hours that would total up to be. And then the second thing, I think what struck us is, first of all, the article is a placeholder in the warrant as it stands, because when it went in, we had no idea how much the bid would come in for. And I think we were all amazed, maybe is the word, of what it came in at in terms of total number was what, 2.4 million, something like that? Which I think, given our role as a member of the community in regards to other things the town needs to do, that's an awful penalty against others who have a need and a wish to get a positive vote in this fall town meeting, which is why we did not vote to put the article in the warrant at this time. We're considering Anita's work, as well as the opportunity from the last meeting to offer our own thoughts to the rest of the town and get their judgment as well as to where it would fit in the general plan of things based on other dollar amounts that are in the warrant. And I think that at least the feedback that I've heard so far is that perhaps its time has not come. And so my own feeling would be the same as Amber's, which is to recycle it and see if there are other things we could do. Now, one of the discussions we had as a group with the facilities people as well, some of the pieces of this particular job might well be done such that we may hedge some of the cost bets, such as there's equipment to buy, and that is strung out over a very long period of time. If we were able to separate it from the package of information and deal with the purchase of the equipment so it's available to install, or for that matter, other pieces of the project where we could do it out of the school's budget piecemeal and not whack the town with that kind of cost at this point. But we can't do that in the very short period of time that we have before us. So again, I would support removing this particular article from the fall warrant and see what we can do with it in terms of trying to figure out a way to get better economy of scale for this particular project. So, and since we haven't voted to put it on the warrant, it's just as easy to say it should be removed. Discussion? Go ahead, Jakob.
I just want to add a comment that I'm glad to hear that from you, Amber, because I was thinking that would be my first vote voting no to this project. Because I did have in mind the roof reparation, the fixing Hastings, and I know that we've been asking for a lot of money in the past years. So I think that'll be a hard pill to swallow for some of the residents in town. So I think pushing it back a few years forward, I think it's a wise choice.
Anybody else?
I would agree. I think the logistics of it, from what Amber and you, Steve, have explained, it makes sense if we can leverage some economies of scale. And I do think the optics of it, now is probably not the time, even though the price tag's only going to go up. I think folding it back in, recycling it back into capital projects, I think is a wise.
Okay.
Can I just make a comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm undecided, but I do think that it is only going to get more expensive. We know that. And the fact that those two gymnasiums are the emergency shelter location for the town, and to not have air conditioning there when people potentially might be spending several nights sleeping concerns me. Having to evacuate when I was young because of a hurricane to my high school gymnasium and spent a day and a night there. It was not fun. So I think as we look at our climate changing, I wouldn't want to push this off too much further, but it's just a concern that I've been thinking about.
Just a comment, and I don't want to interrupt because I know you guys want to all make comments. I do believe that we need to air condition these spaces at some point, and I do believe that the sticker shock of the cost, that's our job, is to consider. We didn't know until we brought in the bid where we were going to be. So we brought all of this forward very reasonably. The adjustment based upon the cost is just good decision making on your part within the logic. So we put the number in front of you for this consideration, and these are the hard decisions you make. I do think that then the capital process will allow them to discuss how far out they want to move that, and it's also good to have it in the queue so they know what it is and where it falls. I think we need to look at, I've asked Kelly to already begin, Kelly Giacopello, to already start looking at, across all of our schools, which spaces remain hot and air conditioned, and we'll put it into a larger discussion for you as well in the context of the increasing kind of climate heat and how often you're hitting longer, hotter days. So, it will return, it will cycle in, and it will be done thoughtfully by all of you. But I do think I also want to add to it the layer of looking at, what other schools have hotspots and put it into a package for you so you can see the context of the schools in general. And I feel confident now that we have the design done, that we are poised with all the information we need to cycle it directly back into the capital cycle, and the only thing it would need to do is be bid. So I think that, that feels good.
I would remind you that the gym at Fales is air-conditioned.
So we could use
Don't forget.
Yes,
We've been
thank
creeping
you.
towards having air conditioning everywhere, but
And it is a full-size gym now, so.
yep, it is.
Thank you.
With that, I don't think we have to take any action except to have this discussion tomorrow. Because we didn't vote to put it on the warrant, and so it's pretty easy to say, well, it should be removed. If you all agree, that would be the action that I would suggest we do tomorrow.
You can choose to do that tonight if you want, and the context of the discussion would look like this. We would still present it as information that we learned and that you took action to withhold it from the warrant given where the bid came in.
It doesn't exist on the warrant.
It doesn't.
There in text, but the school committee has not voted to put it there.
I understand. I'm just
So,
saying,
this is a nuance, but it's
Yes,
important nuance.
they might need that clarification of discussion, and you just said you declined to take the final vote to move it forward.
Yeah.
And I think you'll have to explain that to them. We can present that, which is this has not taken, last night the school committee voted for it not to come forward, and therefore it basically disappears from the draft of the warrant. And we want to present to you our findings, which we will do, what the bid number was and why you took your action, and we can provide it as a summation at the summit, which will be important information, and then we'll be clear and you guys can participate in that discussion so that they know they're going to hear what, if they weren't watching tonight, the important information about what we learned about all of that. So I think that feels good. I mean, we'll just adjust our notes to make sure that that's clear.
I was just going to say that, based on the conversation that's happening, if everyone, except Kristen, maybe if you need more time, but otherwise it would appear that everybody sort of has an idea of how they would go on this anyways, right? So if we wanted to take a vote, we could.
Well, I think we should, at least voice our opinion. It's a statement of concern because, in effect, it doesn't exist yet.
Well, I was meaning today versus tomorrow.
Pardon?
I was talking about today versus tomorrow.
No, I understand.
Right.
I understand. But we're taking a vote, if you will, not to put it on the warrant.
Right.
It's a negative because it's there in text. What it doesn't have yet is the dollar amount of the outcome, right? So as Amber suggests, and I would support it, that we present it to the town in this discussion tomorrow night with everything we just talked about tonight, which is, in fairness to everybody else who's got requests before the town, the sticker shock on this particular bid, as Kristen has said, is not going to get less, but there may be a more efficient way to do it. And the thing is, if you were going to make a choice of air conditioning the gym versus air conditioning all of Armstrong, I would put my money on Armstrong. I wouldn't do the gym. And that's really what we're talking about here. We have a couple of classrooms there that are air conditioned, but the whole building is not. So,
It is a funny procedural little place where you are. It's kind of like, we have to submit warrant articles for discussion. We knew we were waiting on the bid, but people have seen it in the warrant. And while we don't vote you haven't taken a vote of action for it to become in the final warrant, it'll just disappear. But if you want to be on record that you all felt a certain way about it, you can take a vote that you're not moving it forward however you want. I mean, I think, or to the chair's point, you really don't have to do anything. It just becomes a discussion point for tomorrow. So
yeah, we'll present it so that the town is aware of everything that happened to get here. And in fact, the issue is that at this point, in my opinion, we're not going to go forward. And if we take a vote tonight, we won't go forward with this article at this time.
Yep.
And so just procedurally, we don't have to we would only take a vote if we're going to put it on.
Correct.
The fact that it's just sitting there, we could be like, meh, erase it.
Yeah.
We don't have to take a vote on it.
We'll just recommend that, based on discussion with the school committee, that we won't go forward with it. Obviously, the Board of Selectmen and the town manager will take it off the warrant.
Okay.
And that's that. So, but I guess I would ask for an opinion to agree with this position. So I would make a motion that our opinion as the school committee is to delay this article until such time as the bid results are consistent with the need. How's that? So that's a motion. Anybody want to second that?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of that motion? 5-0. Yeah.
I think it's good to have a record on it. I mean, because the warrant is a very formal process. And so procedurally, I think this is really good when we move through these exercises. Like, we all in good faith are trying to keep, everything in alignment to get to fall town meeting. And I think tomorrow's summit gives you a nice opportunity for public discussion with your colleagues of other boards. So, I think it's a good exercise. Thank you.
I guess I would just speak to the procedure. If you review the information that's in the town bylaws, that in fact the warrant closes officially 14 days before the town meeting. However, we've been asked to put stuff on the warrant as drafts, a month and a half ago. And that's how we got into this box. Because technically some group, if they needed to, bring 50 signatures forward, and you can put it on the warrant within, as long as you're not within 14 days of that date of the town meeting, which would mean that you could do it up to the 2nd of October or something like that. So just so you know. But, and with the idea that in fact, order and planning is a good thing, the reason why it's being done this way is because you need to know. Otherwise, you have chaos. Okay, moving on, superintendent's goals.
All right, you've had a busy night tonight, so we'll keep this tight. This is a first presentation draft. So this is the time of year when I look to the feedback from last year, the reflection on where we are, the strategic goals, and I fold my goals together and present them to you as a first read. And then at the next school committee meeting, between now and that time, you can talk to each other, you can talk to me, you can surface thoughts or adjustments, and then I amend my goals based upon the feedback I receive from all of you and build what you want me working on for the year. I try to cycle through, reflecting on the feedback you are providing me to guide that. So I shaped these goals this year. I'll frame them, quickly in the sense that the state requires that I maintain 2 SMART goal targets. So I try to frame those 2 larger areas in a context that, is personal to the work I'll be doing in a way that you have some points. And then there's the district improvement goals, which I shepherd with different levels of focus of my personal work. So if you look to the first goal, it's to effectively develop and maintain meaningful communication for the Westborough community, families, and faculty. I provide the measurement data that I'll use to cycle through for you and give you updates. You'll see the Parent Square implementation, my highlights work, the website update, personal reading that I'm doing, and I can certainly share that with you along the way as I do that work. And my timeline will be to provide to you, again, in the end of year summative, my benchmarks for those. I do also a mid-year report for self-correction on progress. And at that time, you can, give feedback for areas of, where you want more or less. We've talked about this communication goal, and I think communication is like culture and community and so many other pieces. It's never done. You're always working on getting better. You're always working on reframing areas where you've lost track. And so, I use end of year and summer reflection to build these goals to try to be in a space of personal best effort. And so I think it's a goal that, I'm looking forward to working on during the year. The student learning goal, digs into my work to support the development and our professional development work around the continuation of UDL, with a real focus on leveraging, providing leadership to the extended leadership team who are really having championed this work this year by embedding myself along with Daniel into the department head meetings, attending much more of their work, and focusing on developing their skill set to actualize this work down at the classroom level. Again, you'll see that I will give you, feedback on that, and you saw a lot of the context of the UDL work, and Daniel will be reporting on it. It's like I shadow in and out of that goal because it's a curriculum goal, and he provides the feedback for you. District goals, you're going to see that, I hope, the same cohesive echoing of what our principals and our buildings are working on, and we really try to be cohesive. I'm looking at, again, implementing the list of strategic plan targets that you saw tonight. Those are pulled directly from all of the work we've been looking at. I think you want to read these in depth. I don't need to go through all of them. The big one is just the teaching and learning goals. You'll see those. And those are targets that, we highlighted to you along the way last year, and you can read those and ask me about those individually. We'll be tackling those together along the way during the year, and at mid-year report, we can see how we're doing. And then you can see that implementing the newly updated supervision, coaching, and feedback model, one of my primary jobs is to provide leadership to leaders. That's, what a superintendent does, hopefully as an instructional leader and as a coach. I try to live as close to that work as I can. And so this year, working with the department heads, the curriculum coordinators, and that extended leadership model, really putting a lot of energy into lifting their voice, their engagement, and their leadership. Management and operations, really focusing on fiscal challenges that, we really need to continue to manage. We get comfortable with the fact that we annually are able to bring forward thoughtful budgets, but the amount of work and time and energy that goes into crafting and implementing and shepherding a $65 million budget is certainly a large amount of my daily work. Again, I am onboarding a new director of finance. And the two of us in partnership, are moving through how Anita wants to develop that work, the goals of where we are from last year to now. And so, that's a big, important part of making sure that the two of us are having time to dig in depth into the budget. And there's certain complexities to the fact that I've now had two people carrying pieces of budgets over 2 years. She's building a budget that she didn't make off of last year's budget. Dave had done the same. I'm the continuity of that trajectory, and so it requires a lot of time and focus to make sure that we're really digging down into the detail of the budget. And, I don't always have to do that, except at these transition times, at the level of kind of staying close on it. So I just think it's important to understand while that's completely invisible to you, it needs a good amount of time and energy on our part. I think looking at the green initiatives, I feel like we have very fragile traction on those goals, and getting the task force up and running. I paused on that goal last year. People were having trouble picking up the number of new initiatives that we wanted of them. I feel like this year their energy's in a very good place. We'll start the task force. Hallie's a champion of that, working up close with me. The town also just hired a person that's working on sustainability goals that they added, and so we've got someone to partner with now, because I feel like this ownership of that work. So with Tony now coming on board and having a strong team in buildings and grounds, I feel like we can really leverage some partnerships, set up the task force, and be able to get some traction to kind of move that next tier of work forward. I think we continue to look at hiring a diverse and talented faculty, and that's diverse across all ranges of diversity, and making sure that we have a breadth of talented and interesting and capable people to work with our students. I think we had a really good hiring season, but we really have to stay in that training mechanism, and recruitment is so incredibly essential at this point. And again, that takes time and effort. That's personal connection, that's going to the hiring fairs, that's networking, all of that's that human capital part that just takes a lot of time and energy, and I play a role in that as well. Family and community engagement, you'll see that, again, you echo the enhancements of communications, providing more opportunities for families to be in and around professional culture, continuing to focus on connected relationships, collaboration with WLT, maintaining my schedule of being at building level and doing the work that we need to do up close. I'm back full swing into my rotation of community events, but you notice, like, I did not attend back to school nights this year. I've attended 9 years of back to school nights. There's 6 schools. I'm out every night during that phase. This year I didn't, and I'm rotating some of my efforts elsewhere. So I'm trying to be thoughtful about maintaining those energies, and I had been participating in the Bridging Differences work with Westborough Connect, so I didn't do those back to schools. I'm always making those strategic decisions. If you hear that I'm missing from something, or you feel that I should be somewhere else, you need to just let me know. If you feel I needed to be at an event and you thought you would see me, just let me know. I'm pretty much out every night, so I think that rotating that work is important so that I have time to develop the products we need to bring forward during budget season. So those are the goals for the year. I think the best way for this to work is for you to look at them in depth and just make comments. There's different ways you can do that. You can feed those comments to Steve, and then we bring them back to the meeting. We look at enhancements you want to add, change, or update. Or you just call or email me and ask me to add something, or you want to sit down and have a conversation about them. All of that's part of just developing work to make sure you feel I'm working for you, that I'm working effectively, and that I'm continuing to improve in ways that you need to match where we are in the district. So the challenges that we face each year require that my work shift. So we just need to be strategic about making sure I'm focusing on the right things. That would be, again, I think what you need to know for this, and the goal would be that we vote these at the next meeting, because then I just got to, stay at them. So. All right?
Yep, I think. Good.
That's it. You actually are ahead of schedule. I just want to note that you are ahead of schedule. And we do not need an executive session tonight, and because you also are going to be out tomorrow night, it'd be nice to finish a little earlier than maybe you thought, so. All right, that's it.
I make a motion to adjourn.
A second.
There you go.
All in favor?
5-0-0.
I may just
Very good.
do any more work and go home and drink.
Thank you all.
Or cry. One or the other.